Could the fermented food that you are eating actually be slowly killing you? We're going to look at the research. Hey everybody, Chad Cruiser here with Health and Homestead. But before I do, I want to tell you a personal story that is very germane to this fermented food experience. I was out in the state of Oregon and I was doing some work out there, and I was actually, strangely enough, I was staying in a dorm room type experience. Actually, it was a dorm where the guys were on the top floor, the girls were on the floor below. And this one particular day, I had my bedroom right next to the door down to the girls' section. And this odor began to come up, wafting its way up into my room. And at first I smelled it and I thought, oh, that doesn't smell good. And then it became stronger and stronger. And then the thought to me came, something has died in this building. Something is dead. And as I began to smell it, it actually began to be so incredible that I thought, not incredibly tasty, mind you, but so overwhelming, I thought something is surely dead. And I'm imagining like this dead body or dead corpse somewhere in the building, not knowing what on earth is taking place. And then it got to the point where it was just so overwhelming that I literally called down the stairs to the ladies down there, and I said, what on earth is going on? Something, that smell down there, what on earth is it? And it turned out, you know what it was? It turned out that it was kimchi. Now, what is kimchi? You may know, you may be eating kimchi. Kimchi is kind of a Korean, maybe fermented cabbage with different vegetables mixed together. It's kind of a very popular dish over in South Korea. And it has quite a smell to it. It's a heavily fermented food. Now, let's actually look at the research. Thinking about that smell, now here's the thing. Before we actually go into the research, we're going to look at study after study, and we're actually going to talk about a meta-analysis of 60 different studies on this. So we're not just dealing into like a one-off study or some random study here or there or some blog post by some guy in like, Tulsa, Oklahoma or something like that. We're going to actually look at the research. But here's the thing. I want to help you understand my perspective on health. Everybody's got their own ideas, but I'll tell you the way I think. So let's say you found a certain substance, a certain plant, and this plant had all kinds of wonderful bacteria that might be fantastic for your gut. Right now, you may know that researchers, one of the most popular things out there these days is the microbiome, the diversity of bacteria in the gut that is very beneficial for our health. And so what if you found a plant that had all kinds of that fantastic bacteria that in it and on it, and if you ate it, you would receive that bacteria, so you'd get all that bacteria. Well, that would be good for you, right? Well, yeah, theoretically. But what if that same plant also caused cancer? Potentially. Yeah, maybe only in I don't know, 3% of the people that consumed it. Would you call that a net gain because it had the good bacteria, or it had good, whether it's the bacteria, so you have the probiotics or the prebiotics, it has those, it's got all kinds of antioxidants, but it does actually increase people's chances of cancer significantly. So would that be a net gain or a net loss? Now, in standard science, they would actually potentially call that a net gain. I actually would say the opposite. I would say, hey, if some food has some really beneficial properties, but it has some serious disease-causing properties, to me, it's a net loss, and it is not healthy. Now, I know this right here is going to be one of the most controversial videos I do, and I know some people are not going to like to hear the research, and if you have research to prove me wrong, please do, because it's not me. We're just looking at research. This isn't an issue of like what I like, it's just what the research is about. So once again, these same foods, like for instance, let's talk about foods that have these great bacteria in them. One of the most popular things, if you're looking to get good bacteria in your gut, you're going to read all over the blogosphere, all over the internet, and even by Harvard themselves will tell you, listen, fermented foods have fantastic bacteria that's great for your gut. And you know what? Totally, I'm in line with them. It's totally true. It's in there. I mean, you cannot deny that. But once again, when I'm looking at health, I'm not here to look on just a one aspect of health. I want to know overall, the overarching information on a given food. Is it beneficial, or may it actually detract from your long-term health. And even if something had just a very short-term gain but had a long-term detriment, to me, we're at a loss. So let's dive into the science here. Now check this research right here. We read, this is a meta-analysis of soy and gastric cancer risk in the journal Cancer Science. Researchers looked at 20 different studies on consumption of fermented soy products and discovered that fermented soy, which might include things like tempeh, miso, etc., increased the risk of gastric cancer by 22%. So you're somebody out there thinking, I knew it, soy is bad for you, right? Soy is bad for cancer. And that's true if it's fermented. It is actually true if it's fermented or if it's refined. Refined soy, if you're eating high quantities of, soy protein isolate, where you've stripped the protein from the soy out of the soybean, you've stripped it out from the other nutrients, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, the various things that you would find, the fiber that is in the soybean. When you strip it out of there and give it to people in the fermented form, it is true, it actually can raise your cancer risk. So too when you ferment it, it actually, in these 20 different studies, they found that it actually increased the chances of cancer. But let's go on, let's actually ask the question, well, what about soy? Let's look at it. Non-fermented soy foods lowered your risk of gastric cancer by 36%. So notice this, when it's in the natural package, the package that God designed it to be in, the soybean, eating some, cooked soybeans or edamame or these kinds of things, it actually lowers your risk of cancer. Same thing with women, that soy actually lowers women's risk of cancer. And people say, but isn't there some danger for, cancer in women? Once again, if it is in the fermented form, or if it is in the isolated form, and once again, that's not the way humans historically ate foods. And you didn't go to the soybean and think, man, how can I extract the protein out of this soybean? Nobody really thought about that, right? They eat the soybeans, right? And once again, the Japanese, for example, the Japanese, who have significantly less cancer than Americans do, they eat 9 times more soy than your average American. So when it comes to soy, and they have less cancer. So when it comes to soy in its unrefined state or unfermented state actually lowers your chances of cancer. But let's go even further into this. Check out this study right here. Kimchi and the risk of gastric cancer. Kimchi is a traditional Korean food commonly made of fermented cabbage, radish, or other veggies. In a case-controlled study reported in the World Journal of Gastroenterology, kimchi was found to increase the likelihood of gastrointestinal cancer. Someone might be thinking, is this some kind of anti-fermented food scientific journal? Have you ever heard of anybody being anti-fermented? No, I've never heard of such a thing. Have you ever heard of like some big business that was out to get the fermented companies? I haven't either. Because why would somebody be just against this? This is like a historic way to preserve food. It has great bacteria in it. It has the probiotic, the prebiotic. So meaning it has the probiotic, it has good bacteria, it has the prebiotic, it has the fibers in it. And so that's beneficial to gut bacteria. But why would they come out and say this? Now, we've already looked at least, we're talking at least, 20 plus studies at this point on fermented foods. Now, I'm going to share with you later on that not necessarily all fermented foods have been shown to have this cancer-causing effect or increasing the chances of having cancer. I'll talk to you about another one that has not. But when it looks to this, we see kimchi, so fermented cabbage, can potentially increase the risk of cancer. But let's delve even further into the research. Well, what about sauerkraut and laryngeal cancer? A matched case control study was done looking at the effects of different lifestyle habits as risk factors for laryngeal cancer. It was found that higher sauerkraut consumption is associated with higher rates of laryngeal cancer. Amazing. Here is veggies versus pickled veggies and breast cancer. You say, okay, what's the difference between veggies and pickled veggies? Well, veggies would be what you would think of either fresh or maybe cooked veggies versus when you pickle them or you ferment them. What would be the result looking at the scientific literature? So we read that a study reported in the journal Nutrition and Cancer showed that vegetable consumption lowers your risk for breast cancer while pickled vegetables increases the chances of breast cancer. So when looking at breast cancer in particular, which by the way is one of the cancers that women fear the most because it's a very common form of cancer, and as women get into, their 40s and upward, that begins to be a serious thing to consider. And now we realize that pickled vegetables increase your chances of having, breast cancer. But if you have unfermented vegetables, meaning fresh or cooked, what will they do? They'll do just the opposite. So they'll lower the risk of breast cancer. Now, before you get angry, remember, we're just looking at science. This is not me trying to, just pick out the studies out there. This is, if we look at the totality of the research, yes, the bacteria is good, but the cancer-causing properties seem to be there. But let's go further. Now, this is Pickled Food and Risk of Gastric Cancer, a systematic review and meta-analysis of the English and Chinese literature. A meta-analysis of 60 different studies was conducted looking at pickled vegetables in general and cancer risk. Overall, the studies revealed pickled vegetables were associated with a 50% increased risk of gastric cancer. Now, we're talking 60 studies here. Now, I don't know if these are in addition to the 21 studies that we just referenced in the first meta-analysis and then in the second study that we looked at. So whether these 60 studies are in addition to that, I'm not sure. But we have a minimum of 60 studies that show, on average, a risk of cancer increasing by 50%, at least in this particular kind of cancer. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. So I'm going to tell you in just a moment one particular form of fermented food that has not been shown to increase cancer risk. I'll get to that in a minute. But before we look at that, I want you to think this through. Do you think there are 60, maybe 60 different scientific organizations that are doing these studies, or maybe it's, 30 different studies. But do you think there are just organizations all over the world that are super biased and angry about fermented foods, which, by the way, almost everybody likes some form of fermented food, right? Whether it's sauerkraut or whether it's pickles or whether it's this or that. It doesn't matter that in some capacity, people like these things. So why would people want to be against these? Yeah, it'd be one thing if there was like a one-off study and all the other studies showed a benefit to them, but when they just time and time again, they come out with the very same results, at least from my perspective, this seems like they are not biased studies, but this just seems to be a normal consensus. And strangely enough, I have not seen anybody come out except for just the scientists themselves and say this. Nothing in the popular literature, nothing in the news that I've seen. There may be something out there. I haven't studied everything on the internet, but I've at least gone to the studies themselves, not just the blogosphere, looking at the actual studies themselves. This is what we're finding. So you may be asking, okay, what kind of food has been shown not to increase it that's been fermented? It's actually fermented dairy. And I actually don't eat dairy, so this isn't something that interests me. In general, dairy is not really one of the healthiest foods at all, but strangely enough, pickled vegetables increase the risk of cancer, and they haven't found the same for fermented dairy products. Now, I don't like I'm not someone who eats them anyway. I'm not here to encourage you to eat them. I'm just telling you the research that's been put out there at this point. But I want to go further. So you think, okay, so what do I do? If I can't get my good bacteria, what's my gut going to do? I mean, you just took away all the good bacteria there is. And so you're thinking, I know where he's going with this. He's going to say to get some pills. Actually, I'm not going to tell you that. There may be a place, if your doctor suggests that, or you're working with some kind of health professional and they suggest that, you may find some benefit to that, but some research has actually shown a negative effect in certain situations to taking probiotics. Those are basically a pill that has either a single strain of bacteria or multiple strains of bacteria. Some research has actually shown a negative effect. Other research, probably the majority, has actually shown a beneficial effect to taking probiotics or bacterial strains in a pill form. They found that with a particular study with women that it lowers their amount of stress level by taking it. But you're thinking, okay, so where do I get it? I mean, you think about it. For thousands of years, humans have been buying pills with bacteria in them, right? No. And for much of Earth's history, yes, people have for quite a while done fermented foods, no question, but that is not the natural form that it comes in. The natural form that, humans have often eaten foods are either fresh or dried. And I will look at the research on that. It's incredible. Actually, there's a beneficial effect to the dried foods. I just gave it away. But we'll show you the research on that. Even though everybody says don't do it, we look simply at the research, not just what popular ideas about food say. So we'll look at the research on that in a later video. But back to the point. So if I can't get it from the pills, where should I get it? Well, the research shows if you think of something as simple as in one of these. If you think of something as simple as an apple, this apple, we are told by researchers, actually has 100 million bacteria in and on this apple. And this is from the Frontiers in Microbiology. Research in the Frontiers in Microbiology showed 100 million bacteria right in this. So if you want to get your probiotics, eat apples. You're thinking apples? Oh, that's where you get them. Yeah, apples. But you don't want to just eat apples. Do you know how many bacteria are in a pear? I don't either. And I don't know if anybody does yet. But here's the point. A different bacterial makeup is going to be in the pear. There's one of these red pears. You're going to get a different bacterial makeup in this red pear than you are going to in this apple. And then if you add to it a plum, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get even greater diversity of bacteria in your gut. And if you start eating kale and lettuce and spinach and sweet potatoes and plant foods, if you eat a diversity of plant foods, you're going to start getting a better bacterial makeup. Now, obviously, if you're allergic to certain fruits or vegetables, you'd want to avoid those ones, no question. But otherwise, if you digest them well, you're going to be getting fantastic bacteria from these plants. And so I would challenge you, everybody gets to do what they want, but I know this is a struggle. I know it's a struggle sometimes for people to hear these things, and if you have a study, hey, I would challenge you. If you have actual research that shows that actually these have no negative impact on cancer, or that instead they actually have a beneficial impact on cancer, because there's articles out there that say, oh, they could have a beneficial benefit for cancer, but I haven't seen any studies to back it up. It's just people's opinions saying, well, it could give you good gut bacteria. Well, so does this. Where do you think the good gut bacteria originally comes from? Or not the good gut bacteria, yeah, I mean that too, but just bacteria in general. We typically get it from the plant foods that we eat. And so by eating the plant foods in their whole form, and when I say whole, that doesn't mean that you have to have like, every single aspect of a plant, but when you eat, for instance, an apple and you don't just extract the juice out of it, or you eat a sweet potato and you don't extract sugar out of it, but you actually eat the sweet potato, you get a great diversity of bacteria that you need for your gut, making your gut healthier, happier, which in fact should make you healthier and happier. Now, if you like this video, hit the subscribe button. We have research on various different things, health principles, looking at scientific studies on natural remedies. You don't want to miss a single video, so hit the subscribe button and the notifications. God bless and have a fantastic day.